What's up, everybody? It is Thursday, March 16th. We're in the middle of March Madness, but let's be honest, all we really care about is college football. We have got some more spring camp updates for you guys. A lot of schools kicking off. We're going to talk about those that have already kicked off, those that are coming over the next couple days, and about four schools with some spring camp updates. All right, before we get to the schools that I was able to get some notes on, I just want to let you guys know. So, since the last time we went live, Cal, Stanford, Georgia Tech, Eastern Michigan, Arizona, Georgia, South Carolina, Pitt, Middle Tennessee, Virginia, Utah State, Ball State, ECU, FAU, Arizona State, Penn State, Western Michigan, Michigan State, Old Dominion, Nevada, Buffalo, Virginia Tech, Wake Forest have all kicked off their spring camps. And in the coming days, we got South Alabama, Colorado, Memphis, Central Michigan, TCU, Tennessee, Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Syracuse, Navy, Oklahoma State, and UCF. So we're going to have some really packed reports, hopefully, over the next coming days with all of these schools really getting into it. And that's not even talking about all the schools that we were talking about earlier, the Texases, the Ohio State, Cincinnati, Washington. Oh, man, who am I forgetting? Florida. A lot of these USC, a lot of these schools are on spring break this week, so there has not been any updates. All those come back, and a lot of them are going into actual padded practices. So hopefully within the next couple weeks, we're going to have at least a couple days. We're going to have a lot of spring notes for you guys. So for today, just a couple schools. We're going out to the Pac-12 for a lot of these. Is Arizona, who I just mentioned earlier, has opened up theirs. Jayden DeLora has weighed in at 211. It's a 30-pound difference compared to what he was at last spring, where he weighed 182. People were worried if this was going to affect his legs and his mobility. Well, in the first play from scrimmage, DeLora took off for a 20-yard run and didn't look any slower. So we'll see what that means for him. Obviously, you like your quarterbacks to be heavier. We saw all the narratives around Bryce Young this offseason with him being 180 pounds. DeLora being weighed in at 211 and not really looking like he's lost any mobility is definitely a good sign. Noah Fafita, a guy that I was really big on last year, was in drills as well, participating with four-star freshman Braden Dorman, who I do also like, was running with the threes. Both looked impressive. Fafita definitely more mobile than Braden Dorman. Dorman is going to be your typical pocket passer, but I really think fits this offense. I'm really going to be intrigued to see how that battle shapes up the rest of this year, if Dorman can at all pass Fafita, or if it's really a battle going into next year. Because as much as I loved Fafita last year, Dorman, I think, is a better quarterback and probably a better fit for this offense. So I'm really intrigued to see how that shakes out. And in the whole water is wet narrative here, Jacob Cowing by far looked like the best wide receiver in day one there for Arizona. Not surprising. Obviously, a lot of us hoped and thought he was going into the NFL last year or this draft. He did not. I imagine he's going to have a really good spring. Not much else was said even about McMillan, Teteroa McMillan, who I love. I think he's going to be a great wide receiver as well, but I imagine he's going to be very good. Moving on over to the SEC with Georgia. So the big thing with Georgia is this quarterback battle between Carson Beck, Brock Vandagriff, and Gunnar Stockton. We only saw, or at least I shouldn't say I was not there, but the reports and the people that were there only really got to watch mostly handoffs. They did not get to see a lot of passing stuff. But in that, the first team was Carson Beck with Kendall Milton as the main running back. Second team was Brock Vandergriff, who was handing off to Branson Robinson. And this is the fun one. So the third team was Gunnar Stockton, who I think is probably the best quarterback in the room, but he was handing off to Andrew Paul. That's right. Paul is back. He is still wearing a knee brace, returning from that ACL tear last fall camp. Hopefully we get to see more of him. Just a couple players I wanted to note that were at practice and did have a couple standout moments. Roderick Robinson, the freshman, along with tight end Lawson Lucky, both were there and looked good. And then transfers Ra Thomas and Dominic Levitt were also there. So great to see all those guys who Georgia has kind of brought in this offseason, all there in practice already and participating. Moving back over to the Pac-12, we're going to talk a little bit about Oregon. So not much was taken out of this camp. We did get to see that Bucky Irving, Noah Whittington, Jayden Lamar, and Jordan James are going to be the main guys on kickoff return. And on punt return, it is going to be Tez Johnson, Troy Franklin, Chris Hudson, and Cole Martin. The main note that was reported by On3, 24/7, and a couple of the Oregon beat reporters. It was like the Ducks something. I don't remember the exact paper. But a couple of places talked about freshman quarterback Austin Novosad. The reports were they had noticeable zip on his passes in the brief portion of practice that they were able to see. He looked better than Beau Nix, Ty Thompson, and walk-on quarterback Marcus Sanders. They said it looked like he just threw the ball with ease. I mean, if you guys have been listening to us, you know that I've mentioned that since I saw him at the Elite 11 in Dallas this year. I think he's a really talented quarterback. I really think it's the interesting part is obviously going to be where does he end on the depth chart when fall camp gets here and that, because Ty Thompson, I think if he was going to transfer, he would have done it already. So I think he's sticking around. He's not beating out Beau Nix. Beau Nix is going to be the starter, but can Novosad jump Ty Thompson at some point and possibly be the future going forward, knowing that this is Beau Nix's last season in Oregon? We'll see. I do think he's a very talented quarterback. Great relationship with new offensive coordinator Will Stein. I think he would fit well in that offense if given the opportunity. Moving on over to Penn State, Drew Alar, Beau, Pribula, I'm sorry, I probably pronounced that wrong, and Jackson Smolik were all looking good in passing drills to the end zone. Alar showcased the best touch, dropping multiple throws to the back pylon, while all three were hitting the back shoulder. Some required a little bit of zip. It looked like, according to these reports, that Beau's arm looked better than Alar's and Smolik. So we'll see how that plays out. I don't think this is at all a battle, but I think Drew Alar's got a fairly strong arm. Just interesting to hear that Beau has a possible stronger one, at least according to these reports. The only player that really stood out was redshirt freshman Tyler Johnson, who was doing a lot of stuff in the drills and making a couple big catches. Deep passes going to Malik Miega, Keandre Lambert Smith, and Harrison Wallace III during that practice. Looked like Wallace was tracking the ball the best out of those three and was really being able to use his speed to get under some of those deep passes. So there's a couple little reports from Penn State, not much. Back over into the Pac-12. This is going to be, I think, a little bit more interesting for some of you. Arizona State. So Jayden Rashada is there. He is on the sideline. Reports where he's working to learn the offensive language, specifically in certain periods of the practice, as he just arrived. So Trenton Borgo looks to be in the best physical shape of the three of them and gets the ball out quick, specifically to Jacob Conover, who seemed to have a good connection with. Drew Pine was also fairly accurate, getting the ball out. It looks like this is going to be a battle between those two, with Rashada clearly in third, possibly even fourth behind Meredith. We'll see. As he was just learning the offense, he did not take any snaps at the practice today, but it really looked like this battle is going to be between Borgo and Pine, which we probably expected. I wouldn't expect we see Rashada at all unless Arizona State's just out of it. It is intriguing to have him in the Dillingham offense, though. At the wide receiver position, Xavier Gilroy has really been talked about in the two practices. And the practice today, because of the way he was able to separate with not only his speed, but size. And they said he has just this natural playmaking ability. He will likely be playing on the opposite of Elijah Badger. And again, they felt like Xavier looked the best. They are very excited, though, about two transfer wide receivers over the past couple of years, in Jake Smith and Troy O'Meary, both who are in camp and looking healthy for the first time in their careers. Jake Smith made a nice one-handed grab in practice, and Troy O'Meary, I'm just going to quote what was put here, looking like a physical specimen, extremely long-limbed with great size. Melquin Stovall also was making a couple plays. Running back. So if you got the freshman supplemental guy, you'll know about this player. I did not know anything about this guy. I learned about him from the freshman supplemental guy. Cameron Scatabo comes in as a very thickly cut 220 pounds. He is, by all reports, a north-south guy, but looked good in practice. They were using DeCarlos Brooks for his quickness and kind of mixing him in. They said he looked almost as big as Scatabo, but both those guys were taking and splitting the reps. But Tevin White also looked good, and some people believe he actually looked like the best back there, was catching the ball smoothly out of the backfield. So we'll see. Looks like kind of a 3-horse race there for Arizona State. I know some of the guys over at the website really liked Cameron Scatabo and his transfer up to Arizona State. Last school of the day, we're going over to East Carolina. And Mason Garcia got all of the first team reps, followed by Alex Flynn with the second and Raheem Jeter with the third. Marlon Gunn Jr. got the first crack at the running back position. It looks like, according to the reports, that he has elevated his muscle mass and looks like an even better version of himself from last year. Reported earlier this offseason, Jalen Johnson will be moving into the slot, and they are expecting he will be the most targeted player early on in practice and possibly moving into the season. Him and Garcia just seem to have this connection and rapport, while Kerry King and JSI Hatfield were working as the outside wide receivers, with Ryan King working in some, and, got mentioned as looking fairly impressive. So that will do it for us today on this short version of the Spring Camp Reports. I'm going to try and do another one on Friday, a little bit more in depth with all of those schools that just started practice over the past 2 days. Some of those practice reports take a little bit longer to get kind of pushed out there. So I'm going to try and go in and look at a bunch of them as well for Friday. And then, we might be doing them 3-4 times a week as well. Again, next week with a bunch of these teams opening up. But that is it for today's spring practice reports. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn that bell icon on so you don't miss any of the spring camp reports. And we'll be back again with you guys tomorrow.